My name is Lola Demure. Demure. Not very demure at all. I'm a burlesque performer. I've been a professional ballet dancer since I was 14, professional burlesque for the last 13 years. Event producer, teacher at Font Dance Studio, and choreographer. I have been performing pretty much my entire life. I come from a long line of dancers. My grandmother was a showgirl on the vaudeville circuit, and she was a professional tap dancer. And so my mom was also a ballet dancer. And then when it was my turn to come around, I had very big influences from my mom and my grandmother to dance. And so I've been on the stage since I was a little kid. And I honestly, whether I'm doing ballet or burlesque or whatever, I honestly can't imagine life without that being a part of it. You know, when I had my son, obviously I had to take time off. And it was like a big hole in your chest. You know what I mean? When there's something that's such an integral part of your life and that goes away for a little while, like it's a big deal. So I really can't imagine life without performing or teaching or dancing at all. So my son was born in 2007 and I was regularly taking class until I was about 8 months pregnant. And then it just, it was just like, wow, I can't like jump or, I'm going to hurt myself. So it was more of a precaution than like a necessity. And then, it was probably, we moved down to San Diego in 2009. And then I randomly took my son to a like mommy and me dance class. And that's how I found cabaret burlesque. So when I took my son to this mommy and me class, it was an open studio. So I was just screwing around and jumping and, just messing around because I had an open space. And the owner of the studio saw me and she was like, hey, like I'd run this. I'm a choreographer for this troupe. It's a burlesque troupe. You need to come and you need to audition. And so I went to a rehearsal and it was kind of like an audition, but they saw that I had how trained I was. And they were like, no, you're just in the troupe now. And it was like 2 weeks before the show. Yeah. So they're just like, yep, you're in. And the show was like 2 weeks later. And so that was like me starting to dance again was in 2009. So, and here we are. Yeah, no, I ran a troupe for a little while. It was called the Music Box Burlesque Review. Yeah. Good times. Lots of shenanigans. Everybody finds burlesque in their own way, whether it's like, oh, this is like a very exclusive studio and I hate the gym, so I'm going to just go take dance classes. You know what I mean? Everybody finds it on their own in their own ways. And then usually when they see that there's like some type of performance opportunity, then most people will take advantage of that. My personal journey was like, I thought I was doing burlesque, but I was doing like cabaret and musical theater where it's like scantily clad, but you're not really maybe you take off your gloves, but that's about it. And then the next step, I found an actual burlesque troupe and they took me under their wing. And then I started doing more of the striptease elements. And then once I found that, I was like, oh my gosh, I love this. But I mean, that's not everybody's journey. Some people might not be comfortable going down to pasties, and that's totally fine. You know what I mean? So, it's a journey. It's not it's, you just do what you do when you're comfortable to do it, if that makes sense.
Right.
You know what I mean? There's no like, oh, well, if you're going to be a burlesque dancer, then you have to take I get nervous before every performance. My theory is that you get nervous because you care. You know what I mean? It shows that you respect the art and that you care about your performance. And so I would be concerned if I wasn't nervous. So it's like right when I'm getting introduced is when those are all like, okay, here we go, or I know I'm up next and it's like, all right, I got the jitters. And then as soon as the music starts and I step out, it's gone. Depending on the show as well. I mean, if it's like a really big, prominent show, then yeah, I'll probably be more nervous than just that. But yeah, I think being nervous is a good thing. My mom really made sure that I was really well-rounded, really comfortable with public speaking. the more you're in front of an audience, the less like scared you become. And for me, having been in several different professions, you know, public speaking is super easy for me. Ballet is different from burlesque in the sense that we are telling a story. And so we dance at people. Like, we're not trying to engage the audience. We're just telling the story on stage. You know what I mean? And with that, with ballet comes certain kind of nerve-wracking things. Like, I was competing in like one of the world's biggest competitions, and the shank of my point shoe like snapped in the middle, and you could see it in the video, like my foot go, wah, wah, but I kept going. You know what I mean? So there's things like that, or like your partner doesn't get you up in a lift, or, you know, so there's different elements that are more nerve-wracking in ballet compared to going down to pasties and a G-string in front of all of these people. Like, that can be nerve-wracking. I've always kind of just been an extrovert, so, you know what I mean? I've always been kind of running around half naked. But, you know, in burlesque, I mean, a pasty might fall off. That's a big deal, you know? And you might not realize it, and the audience is like, cover your titty! And you're just like, what? And then you're like, oh shit, you know what I mean? So, like, there's different things in different dance types that would make one, you know what I mean, nervous or something like that. So, but I mean, like, you either do it and go through it and conquer that fear, or it's going to hold you back. My very first professional contract, I was 14, and it was with the American Ballet Theater, which for a young ballerina is like, I mean, all of the principal dancers were just like, I want to be you, you know? And I got to be a performer in the ballet, and the ballet was Public Corsair. It's, you know, and just, it was so magical and amazing. And like, the dancers who are my idols were like literally sweating on me. You know what I mean? And it was just such an amazing experience and so inspiring. So that for ballet was probably, you know, one of the biggest shows I've done. For me in burlesque, some shows I really just love to go and improvise my whole act, or I'll like have listened to the music so much that like I know it, and I'll block out how I want to come in, and I want to hit this kind of choreography on this section of the music, and this is how I want to end. And so that's when I can really just like let go and be present and engage with my audience. But for ballet, it's more about you have to do the choreography the way that it's set. But it also is a good thing, because once you've rehearsed it enough, then it's just, you know, muscle memory. And so, you know, you develop your character in ballets, and you know what I mean? And it's just like, once you got all of that in your body, then you're able to let go instead of just letting go from the start. That's just how it works for me. I think with ballet, it can be very like rigid, and like the unobtainable perfection and starting that from such a young age, it can burn people out before they even have the opportunity to dance professionally. So I'm definitely able to like separate the two. And while of course I expect perfection from myself, you know, that's something that I struggle with daily. Just normal life is perfection. Like, why, you know? But with burlesque, there's definitely more room to have that freedom from perfection. And so a lot of my acts kind of start out as kind of like an improv act, and then I'm like, oh, this works with that, and then I kind of solidify the choreography as time goes on, and that's how I'm able to perfect it. You know what I mean? But sometimes my bra doesn't come off. Then, like, what do you gotta do? You just pull it down and be like, ta-da, here's my tits. You know what I mean? So there's definitely space for that in burlesque where there isn't that at ballet. I'm definitely more free to be who I am in burlesque. You know, loud and, you know, rambunctious and just all over the place and dancing on bars. Whereas in ballet, I had to subdue that, because ballerinas are supposed to be meek, and you're just supposed to shut up and listen And I've never really been that person. So finding burlesque really married the two into something that is genuinely who I am on both sides. Coming from a very religious household and, you know, very conservative, and modesty was like a big thing in my household, to now be doing the complete opposite. I understand where those would be barriers. But at the end of the day, if you're a consenting adult, you're not hurting yourself or someone else, and the fear is coming from a place of like, my family might reject me. Like, at the end of the day, you are in control of your life. And if you want to try something, try it. And then you'll find out for yourself if it's for you or not. You know what I mean? Like, that is the best way to be your truest form, is just go out and try things that make you uncomfortable, because when you're uncomfortable, you're growing, whether people approve or not. And why do you want that approval if it's holding you back? I have ripped people off of the flaunt stage by the elbow because they went up during someone's performance and touched the performer, and I just ripped her off. Honestly, I've been touched by more women. I've never been groped or anything inappropriate with man. I've been touched by more women, which is really sad, because like, you should know better. Anyways, going back to the question. So like, last night was like the very first show at a bar out this way. And, you know, it's a pretty conservative out here. And so usually with like brand new audiences, they like are with their wife, and so maybe it's going through their head like, oh, I'm watching a strip show with my wife, and like, okay, that might be awkward. Or like, they don't know how to react, like they don't know a little bit clap, even if we do the rules, you know. So it's kind of just like easing people into it. It was a quiet crowd last night, but they had a ton of fun and like great feedback, and like, if they weren't enjoying themselves, they walked outside, and at least they weren't rude and disrespectful to the performers. You know what I mean? They just got up and walked outside until the show was over, and that's totally fine. You know, some people are comfortable with it and some are not, and we have to be okay with that, because that's their boundary. You know what I mean? So if they're sitting there and like on their phone, like, I'll say something, because that's rude. You know what I mean? If you don't enjoy it, just walk outside. That's totally fine. But, you know, I think there's like a mutual respect there with like, okay, these people, like, it might go like, there was a table of men that were like, you know, like the stage was here and their table was here, and they were not looking at us. They were like looking at the table. And so when I went on, I was like, oh, I'm going to go up to them and be like, I heard you're Shy Boys. And I was just, you know, I just like go like, boop, you know, and then leave, and like, that would be it. But then by the time I got out there, they had already stepped outside. So like, as long as they're not rude or like interrupting the performance, like, cool. Like, if you're uncomfortable, great. I get that. You know what I mean? But that usually only typically happens when like a show is just starting, and like, it's like a newer town or like a newer venue or like a newer producer, because they haven't created their own following yet. So you make it fun and you're having fun, people are going to have fun. So, you know, just because we're of the same sex doesn't mean you get to touch me. You know what I mean? Like, come on, dude. I sometimes will have like a plant in the audience, and I'll like interact with them like that. But like, I tell them ahead of time, like, hey, can I fuck with you tonight? And they're like, yes. I'm like, great. You know, so there's that like consent. But I also have seen performers just go out and do that. It just depends on the performer and the audience. You know what I'm saying? Like, I've seen a lot of crazy shit in burlesque, from very tame to very, very not tame. And so, I mean, that's the beauty of burlesque, is that the performer makes it what they want to be, or what they want it to be. And so, I mean, anything goes in burlesque. It just is up to that performer and their comfort level. The closest to nudity that we get is like, if we take off a G-string, then we have a Birkin, which is a pussy pacey, as I like to call it. We just tape it on and it goes up the back. And so again, it's just up to people's comfort level. But I like, that's probably one of my favorite reveals, is like, I've already taken off my bra and I got my panties on. And then I have a certain pair of panties where, like, if you pull a certain side and string, just the back flap comes down. And when I'm wearing my Merkin, you don't see anything. It doesn't look like a G-string. And people are like, oh, losing their minds, right? That like, oh my God, we're going to see her vagina, right? And then I turn around and I throw it and I'm like, haha, I got you. You know what I mean? Seeing people that are like, then I go, when I see people like that are nervous and they're like sitting in the front row, then I'll go fuck with them. Cause it's like a game, you know what I mean? Like who's going to blush first? Who's going to look away first? I always win. That right there, like feeds in. I'm like, yeah, powerful, you know? Like, oh, you're nervous? Have a no. You know? Just like, you either make them laugh, you make them blush, you make them... I haven't made anybody cry yet. Maybe that'll be my next goal. Or they like look away. But it has to come from a place of confidence.
Right.
And I didn't find that probably like 7 years into my burlesque career. I started taking pole classes and like exotic floor work classes and stuff like that. And so like, that's when it clicked. Like, oh, that's when the click from like dancing at people to engaging people happened. And I was like, I started like feeling myself and like having that confidence to like really, you know, zone in on myself. Or like, you know, at floor work, we'd like split up into groups. And then I would practice like engaging people in class and like, okay, who's going to turn away first? It's not going to be me. And so I do everything I can to make them blush. And then that's when I understood like, okay, I'm getting it now. You know what I mean? I already had the confidence. I just didn't know how to utilize it. You know what I mean? So like in ballet, we're telling a story and we're dancing at people. We're like looking at each other. We're engaging with each other, but not the audience. Whereas in burlesque, you have to engage the audience. That's the art. That's like the baseline for the art is engage the audience. And so for me, taking pole classes, which is like really slow and really seductive and like really like taking what's inside and emoting it out, you know? So those classes really helped me understand how to take my confidence and like use it on my audience. So it was a big epiphany. I was like, oh, I get it now, you know? So when I found the studio and that it was like 2 weeks before the show, I needed a stage name. And so I always liked Lola. You know, it just spoke to me. You know, Lola sounds spicy and feisty and, you know, so like that resonated with me. But then I was having a hard time finding a last name. And, you know, it was going to be, and this was like, you know, early 2010. So it was like everybody was like something Von, you know, like Dita Von Teese or something Von something. And so my director was trying to steer me away from that because there were already so many. And so she just gave me a list of adjectives. And I liked the way that Lola Demure rolled off the tongue. And it was like the right amount of syllables and like, you know what I mean? And so I just picked that as a filler. But then it stuck because like I'm not Demure at all. And so it's kind of funny too. So it's kind of like a juxtaposition with like Lola, she's super funny and spicy and crazy. Demure, not so much. You know what I mean? So, and actually my production company before it was Demure Productions was not so Demure Productions, but that was too many words coming out of your mouth. So I had to shorten it. I have a big social media presence. So Instagram is always a good place. Lola Demure, all one word. We follow my production company on Instagram as well. Demure Productions, all one word. Facebook. Yeah, I mean, a quick Google search, who is Lola Demure?